give y'all an update on the David Anthony Burke case. Um, they just had a press conference earlier, and they plan on having another press conference later on today. But before I get to that press conference, I want to give you guys a rundown of what has happened so far. Shout out to Law and Crime.
We are following major breaking news tonight. Singer David has been arrested in connection to the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas, according to the LAPD. This is a case that stretches back more than 2 years to when she was last seen alive. Her decomposed body found in the trunk of David's Tesla late last year. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, let's get to this breaking news coming in right now from Los Angeles. A bombshell announcement by the LAPD. I want you to take a look right here. This is the post that was put out by the public information officer with the Los Angeles Police Department on social media announcing the singer, known as David, had been arrested by homicide detectives in LA, quote, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Now, David, his real name is David Burke. He is now being held without bond, and he hasn't been charged as of yet. The LAPD says that his case will be presented to the DA on Monday for filing consideration. We're going to go over the process here in just a moment. This is a case that has taken months to get to this point. I know so many of you have been following this, and now it seems like the next step, a major step, is still something that's going to take some time before we learn a lot of information about this case, and we'll be talking to former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani about that here in just a moment. But as we focus now on this announcement, it may feel like a long time coming because David was announced as a suspect in November of 2025. Now, before we get into what will happen next, I do want to get you up to speed on this case because it is one that has been going on in some ways months, in other ways years. According to the LAPD, this all started in September of 2025, and that is when officers responded to an impounded lot in Hollywood after there were reports of a foul odor coming from a vehicle, a Tesla. Now, that vehicle, it had been towed days earlier after it was found on a street, abandoned, it seemed, in Los Angeles. Now, police say that vehicle, that Tesla, it was registered to David Burke. Many people in the music community know him by just one name, David, D4D. Now, when detectives searched that car, they found a body, and that body was later identified as a 14-year-old girl, her name, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her body was in the front storage area of the Tesla, that's like the trunk of the vehicle, and it was in a state of decomposition, law enforcement said. Investigators have said that Celeste may have been dead for weeks before she was discovered. The teen's mom told investigators that she was last seen and heard from in April of 2024. So here we are in April of 2026 with David now under arrest in connection to her murder. The last time she was seen alive, according to her mom, all the way back roughly 2 years ago. Her mom also added another point about her daughter, and it was a friend named David. Now, by late 2025, sources were telling ABC News that David was being considered a suspect in the case, but no charges had been filed. Yet behind the scenes, a grand jury had been hearing evidence in the case, including Burke's reported travel to the Santa Barbara area of California during the spring of 2025, and a search of the Hollywood Hills property where he was reportedly staying, and reports of a high-heat burn cage found at that location. Then we go to January of this year, 2026. David's alleged close friend, a man named Neil Langston, was arrested in Montana for failing to appear as a witness in a Los Angeles grand jury investigation. And a week after that, Langston was spotted entering a Los Angeles courthouse and reportedly testified before the grand jury. But since then, For the most part, frankly, crickets in this case. No real developments, of course, until now. Joining us now to talk about this breaking news, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Always great to have you on Long Crime. Big story out of Los Angeles tonight. Just what's your reaction? Because we have been covering this for so long about David's arrest.
Chris, my reaction is better late than never. I think this was something that we've all been expecting. When a body is found decomposing in the frunk of your Tesla, and there has been a young girl who's been missing for quite some time, and there's plenty of evidence that she ran away with you or a member of your entourage. I think there was a lot of evidence here pointing to David, and really the question was, what really took so long? And I think my initial reaction is, I live and work in LA. I respect law enforcement, but things can move slowly here. But I think this investigative grand jury, I think, really is the answer. I think the DA wanted to lock in some members of David's inner circle to make sure that they cooperate, they don't go sideways in trial, and I think that's what they were waiting on before they ended up arresting.
So the announcement that came from the LAPD's TIO account says he's been arrested in connection to the murder of Celeste Rivas, and then it says that he's being held without bond, and then the case is going to be reviewed by the DA's office on Monday, or it goes in front of the DA's office on Monday. Like, if you can just walk us through the process of how that works, as opposed to them saying tonight, he has been charged with this, and he's going to make his first appearance tomorrow.
Well, typically, when you talk about the DA, it's a reactive case. It's not like this. Law enforcement, they arrest someone, they prepare a report, that file lands on the DA's desk, and there's a charging DA that makes a decision. It's a little bit different in this case because it's more of a proactive investigation. Obviously, Celeste Rivas has been missing for quite some time and has been dead for also quite some time. So you have this case that has been worked on for more than 6 months now. I mean, I think, if I recall correctly, Celeste's body was found in September. Yeah. We all saw the video of the car being impounded and that search. Then, of course, law enforcement executed search warrants at David's home, again, months and months ago. So this is the type of case that isn't just a file that lands on some DA's desk. This is a case that is being directed by prosecutors at the district attorney's office. They convene this investigative grand jury. And we know that a grand jury has two functions. In most states and at the federal level, their function is to indict. But it also has an investigative function. They have subpoena power, so they can subpoena people, witnesses, they can subpoena information and documents. And that's what the grand jury was doing in this case. So it seems to me that the prosecution has this all buttoned up right now. This isn't the type of case they're reacting to. This is a case where they think we not only have enough probable cause to get that arrest warrant and get past a preliminary hearing, but we have enough to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury at trial.
Desktop lasers aren't known for making fine furniture. Joinery is difficult. They can only cut thin material. They're small. Today, I want to prove all of that wrong by making a full-size Danish modern chair using only the brand new X-Tool P3. I've had 7 different lasers, and
reasonable doubt to a jury at trial.
Do you think that this came as a surprise to David tonight, this arrest?
I think, given how long it's taken, maybe folks have forgotten about it, but obviously there's been a lot of attention on this case, and frankly, a lot of negative media attention. Again, I sit here in LA, and a lot of folks ask me, what is LAPD doing? How could a young girl be missing for so long? How could her teacher give an interview saying that she ran off with someone named David? How could her body be found in the trunk of a vehicle? I mean, even if it was an accident, that in and of itself is potentially a crime. So why haven't any arrests been made? And I think really now we're going to know the answer very soon. I think the information is going to come out. We're going to have a lot more of the evidence, whether it's witness testimony, cooperators, whether it's electronic evidence, cell phones, social media. There's a lot of people watching. Social media, sleuths, detectives, they've followed that digital footprint, right? And they've seen, pictures, images on social media, the two seemingly together. And I think all those are sort of bricks in the wall that are going to eventually be the reason that David is convicted in this case.
And beyond that too, I mean, I think when you think about the LAPD, like celebrities, it's not a big deal for them in the way that it might be for other police departments across the country. When you look at the timeline, yeah, the case like certainly has these elements that we followed the developments along the way, but how much did the
Let me
celebrity of
see if
David
there's any more
add to the timeline it
on
took
David.
for him to be arrested in connection to this? And we'll see what they specifically accuse him of.
Well, it's interesting. The celebrity factor, people think it helps. I don't necessarily think it helps being a celebrity in LA. In fact, it draws more attention to it. I mean, obviously, look, the case I kind of give the example of recently, she was just sentenced, Matthew Perry, right? He was involved in a drug-related death. He was a victim. But the fact that, the ketamine queen, Jasmine Song, killing Matthew Perry, and again, I'm not naive, that case was treated differently than the 2019 case when she killed someone with ketamine. So, the celebrity factor draws attention to it. The reality is we're talking about the case here on Law and Crime because it's David. And, there are many young girls that go missing, and I'm not asked to speak about it. And it doesn't make it any different. It doesn't make it any less right. There's women that are trafficked, they're sexually abused, they're victims of violence, they're even murdered. Hundreds, thousands every single day. So I think the celebrity factor probably ended up drawing more attention to it, both law enforcement and prosecution attention to the case because of who David is.
Right, and even when you think of LA, I mean, we've talked about Nick Reiner recently, very different circumstances in that case, but I mean, just the amount of attention, the amount of cameras at court when he makes an appearance, it's just different than other families that have dealt with issues like that. When you look at this case going forward, I remember Neil Langston, David's friends, he gets arrested for not cooperating with this grand jury. It stands out to me just about the way, at least on the outside, it seems that prosecutors have been going about this.
Yeah, think about that case. If I recall correctly, here's someone who refused to testify before the grand jury, and the DA's office went out of state to get an arrest warrant to bring him back to California. I mean, that's how seriously they're taking this case, if I recall correctly. So this isn't any other case. This isn't any other runaway. This isn't any other young girl who is the victim of violence. I mean, this case has been treated differently. I wish LAPD had unlimited resources and time to go after all these cases, all these young girls. Their lives matter, and it's sad that this is unfortunately a tale that's all too common. Obviously, we don't know what happened here. We don't know if it was an accident, she was murdered intentionally, she overdosed, she was trafficked. I mean, there's all sorts of speculation out there. I don't know exactly what happened. But what we do know is this is a young girl that was missing for quite some time. She had run away at least once before, and it took a very long time to find her. So I think during that time period, there's going to be a lot of evidence. Obviously, we've seen some of the video evidence the last time she was seen. Again, I expect there to be a lot of digital evidence. It's going to be a strong case, I think, when it's all said and done.
And when it comes to this kind of how the mechanics of the whole situation works out, so if he's arrested tonight, he's being held without bond, he hasn't specifically been charged with anything, and then you have, on Monday it's going to go in front of the DA, like how are you able to hold him for that long a period of time, even through the weekend potentially?
So yeah, these Thursday arrests oftentimes end up with a Monday arraignment because of the time period. Typically, you have about 48 hours to be brought before a judge, but it ends up being the next court day. So that's why the initial appearance will likely be on Monday, where David will be arraigned on the charges. Those charges will be read aloud in court. Expect a lawyer. I think he already has a lawyer based on some of the statements that were made last year. Expect his lawyer to enter a not guilty plea, and then the process starts. Again, if it's a grand jury indictment, which is not typical, there won't be a preliminary hearing, but usually here in LA, the district attorney proceeds by a complaint and a preliminary hearing. Again, just because there's a grand jury, I believe it's just an investigative grand jury. They'd have to convene another grand jury to indict, and I don't think that's what they're going to do. Typically what they do is, in LA, they charge on a complaint, then after some period of time, there has to be a preliminary hearing. And at that preliminary hearing, the judge determines whether there's enough probable cause to move forward to a full-blown jury trial. So the DA will present some limited evidence, usually through a handful of law enforcement witnesses, and this process is going to get started.
Ranger knows that if you're a school custodian, cleanliness is your top priority. That's why you can rely on Granger for a range of cleaning products and equipment, from disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
And that was kind of my next question, because we don't know specifically the cause of death. At this point, we know the state at which her body was found, sadly, but we also don't know what the charges specifically he's going to face. How much may we learn, knowing how much in LA and in California when it comes to, I think of a state like Florida, and you can find the probable cause document online. How much might we learn on Monday if that's what was arraigned on something?
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot. Obviously, the nature of the charges. So you have first-degree intentional murder, you have special circumstances, you have second-degree murder, you have manslaughter if it's an accident. Obviously, there might be charges related to moving the body. Are there going to be potential sex charges? I mean, I think that would be obviously very important. I mean,
Yes,
we're
should
just
be.
guessing right now.
Sure.
There's no death penalty here in California. There's been a moratorium. We haven't had an execution in 20 years. So don't expect to see the death penalty regardless of what the charges are. But again, first degree intentional premeditated murder, special circumstances, if there's any type of enhancements, that's all going to be very telling. And look, it's just a matter of days before this evidence comes out.
And when we think about moving past Monday, and again, this is a case that is developed, it feels like very slowly and very much under wraps outside of the reporting that we've seen. Like after Monday, depending on what the charges are, what does the timeline potentially look like for a prosecution of David?
Well, it's going to move quickly. And obviously, it's David's right to a speedy trial. And typically what you see is the defense waives their right. They want to get the discovery. They want to get all the evidence. So what is typical is the defendant will waive time. That means they'll review the discovery and they'll see how they can challenge this case. Now, if you're looking at murders, and again, I'm assuming this is a murder case because he's being held without bond. I mean, typically you have three types of defenses. One, it wasn't me, right? So you got finger pointing, it was an accident, all right, an intent to do it, right? So something happened that was something less than murder, or some sort of self-defense. Now, obviously, Celeste Rivas, by all accounts, is a pretty small young girl. I would be surprised if there's a self-defense argument, just like Dick Reiner, right? Surprised you see self-defense in that type of case. His parents are a lot older, they're in their bedrooms. But typically, if you're seeing, like, what is the defense going to argue? They either argue identity, they argue intent, wasn't premeditated, it was an accident, something along those lines. It was manslaughter, heat of passion, legal insanity. You start attacking intent, or you start putting up some legal defense like self-defense. But again, I would be very surprised if it was self-defense in this case.
And I know we were talking about Neil Langston just a short time ago, but you think about witnesses in this case and who may have already talked to law enforcement, what type of information that law enforcement may have. We don't know what those conversations were like, but what are those conversations typically like in a general sense as a prosecutor when you have someone who might be a friend of David, might be a friend of someone who's now going to face some pretty serious charges, about getting that person in line with what you want as a prosecutor?
Well, Chris, I sort of cut my teeth on drug trafficking cases, and when you're dealing with any criminal organization, and I'm not saying David's entourage is a criminal organization, but what you want to do is you want to lean on the less culpable people in the organization. Maybe someone was, for instance, giving Celeste Rivas drugs, Maybe someone wasn't involved in the murder, but they had access to the Tesla. It seems like a lot of people did. What you want to do is lean on them and make sure they flip against the most culpable person in the organization. It's really prosecution 101. And what makes some of these charges strong, let's say you have a conspiracy charge, conspiracy to commit murder. You can really have nothing to do with actual murder, but if you're engaged in overt acts and furtherance of the conspiracy, let's say it's a larger conspiracy, let's say it's a trafficking conspiracy, well, the next thing you know, you could be substantively on the hook for Celeste Rivas' death, even if you didn't actually kill her. So there's a lot of potential time that other individuals may be facing as co-conspirators, accessories, if they're aiding and abetting. And what you want to do is lean on them, make sure to get the information you want, make sure it's truthful, make sure they're going to cooperate. That's what that grand jury is for, testifying before the grand jury. Lock them in so that way when you move forward against the principal, the person that you think is the most liable, the most culpable, seems like it's David here, that you have those witnesses locked in, because otherwise, guess what? They're going to be the next people to be charged and arrested.
And then just lastly, I mean, I'm sure for whether you're a detective on the case, you're a prosecutor who's been, kind of watching the evidence come in and you're thinking about what the charges could be. Emotionally, what is the moment like tonight, knowing that David is now in custody and you've hit a new level?
He should have been in
investigation
custody.
in the case?
I don't see what's the
For law
problem.
enforcement, the prosecution, I think there is going to be this burden lifted because, again, there have been folks like me. I've been very critical of law enforcement. I said, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it took
Why
way
hasn't
too
an arrest been
long.
made? If it's not David, who is responsible for this? So I think there is that relief, but now the real work starts because now you have a lawyer on the other side, and David has money and he's already lawyered up. At least that's my understanding. That's going to fight this tooth and nail. And because there's no death penalty in California, and because you're not going to give a discount on this case, you're not going to give David, if he really was involved in sort of recruiting or enticing this girl, potentially kidnapping her and killing her, are you going to give him anything less than life? So there's no real deal to be had here. There's no death penalty to take off the table. So this is the type of case that's very likely going to go all the way to jury trial. That's just the reality of it. So, but if you're talking about the people that I've been thinking of, it has to be Celeste Rivas' family. I can't imagine what they've been going through all these years. Your young girl goes missing and then she's found dead, and you really don't have answers. So hopefully the family can finally get some answers for everything that was.
Very well put. Former federal prosecutor Nima Romani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Big breaking news tonight out of Los Angeles. Thank you as always for being with us on Long Crime.
Of course, Chris. Thanks for having me as always.
All right, just before we go, I just want to reiterate this news once again and what we know at this point. We know that David has been arrested in connection to the murder, and murder is the word that is being used here by the Los Angeles Police Department in connection to the murder of Celeste Rivas. And this is key, as he's being held without bond right now, we don't know what charges he's going to face, but this case will be presented to the district attorney's office in LA on Monday. We'll continue to follow this closely. That will do it for this episode of On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.
His billionaire parents died in a car crash when he was only 5, and overnight he was left with nothing. He went from velvet sheets to the hard floor of the orphanage. He thought he would spend his life with nothing. But with an unexpected stroke of luck, at the age of 25, he was noticed by Mr. Wilson, one of the wealthiest men in Oris.
David's arrest for the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez is a major development in this case, and we're bringing on the man who's been investigating this story from the very beginning, who has been very vocal about his frustrations, and now has a theory as to what this arrest may mean. Private investigator Steve Fisher is coming on. I want to do a full breakdown of what just happened in the last 24 hours, a timeline of how this now fits into the overall story.
Good afternoon.
Can expect next, because at this
To
time,
whoever you are.
David has only been arrested, not charged. Why? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, real quick before we jump into all of this, we have this app, this partner that I think you're going to love. It's called Upside. Upside gives cash back, extra cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, takeout. So here's what you do. You download Upside for free. You claim an offer from 100,000 plus locations. You pay like normal with your card. You verify the purchase, and just like that, money back. So say I need to get gas or want takeout one night, I'll search for Upside offers first, and after I spend, money appears in my app that I can transfer right into my bank account. And Upside's frequent users earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting your cash back, click the link in the description or scan the QR code, but make sure to use promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. I can't talk about the arrest of 21-year-old David Anthony Burke, the singer, for the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez without bringing on Steve Fisher. We've had him on for so long. We've had him on for months. The private investigator who has been on the ground following this case from the very beginning, who has been quite vocal about his frustrations with this investigation and with an apparent lack of action, lack of transparency. Remember, Steve represents the owner of the property that David was reportedly staying at in the Hollywood Hills, apparently near where that Tesla was found with Celeste's body inside before it was towed to an LA tow yard. And remember, when I say Celeste's body was reportedly found in that car, decomposed, dismembered. And to give you a time...
And here's my question. Why was he not at least taken in for questioning during that time period? Mind you, he didn't get questioned until now. Pay attention.
Line here as we do this kind of case breakdown, as we try to analyze what is happening right now with this arrest. And to be clear, David hasn't been charged yet. I want to get into this. August 27, 2025, this Tesla, again reportedly registered to David, is ticketed, it's marked as possibly abandoned, and this leads to it eventually getting towed. September 8th, at that tow yard in LA is where authorities discover Celeste's body after reports of a foul odor coming from the car. Decomposed, dismembered, her body parts in bags. September 18th, detectives execute a search warrant at the residence that David was purportedly staying at. Reportedly, they collected electronics and computers. David also canceled his Withered tour at this point, so we no longer publicly hear from him or see him up until his arrest yesterday. November 21st, the County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner receives a court order reportedly initiated by the LAPD to place a security hold on the medical examiner's findings. So essentially, the court sealed the records, meaning cause of death, those other details, not to be publicly released. By the way, November was interesting because the LAPD indicated that it was standing by its prior September 29th statement, quote, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined the cause or manner of Ms. Rivas Hernandez's death. As such, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body. And now, remember, he's just been arrested for her murder, so I would imagine something has changed there. December 2025, we start hearing reports that evidence is being presented in front of a grand jury. We even hear reports that a record executive was grilled by the prosecutor, allegedly being asked, why didn't you call police? Now, grand jury, this is what's confusing. It's not usually the way we know it. They're presented evidence, and they come back and determine whether there's enough probable cause for an indictment, right? An official charge against somebody. There's also investigative grand juries that hear evidence. They can issue subpoenas, they can lock in testimony, and maybe they're not tasked with returning back an indictment. February 12th, we learn that David's purported friend, Neo Langston, was arrested out in Montana, reportedly on a warrant for failure to appear as a witness, is subsequently brought back to LA to testify, we presume in front of the grand jury. Later that month, we learn more details from court filings. This is actually a connection with attempts to subpoena David's family members to testify, and we learn that David is reportedly the target of a murder investigation, and we learn how Celeste was reportedly dismembered. April 16th, David is arrested.
You looking to establish your business using an address other than your home? Wish you had a professional...
April 16th, David is arrested. Now, this came in from the LA County District Attorney's Office. Quote, our office is aware of the arrest of David Anthony Burke by the Los Angeles Police Department. The case is expected to be presented to the Major Crimes Division, at which point prosecutors will review the facts and evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to file charges. At this time, additional information is not available. We will share an update on Monday once a filing decision has been made. And then this came in really late last night, early morning, good evening. The individual mentioned is still in LAPD custody. You may reach out to the district attorney's office once the case has been presented to them. Then on Thursday night, the public information officer for LAPD put this out on X. Detectives from Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division have arrested David Burke, a 21-year-old resident of Los Angeles, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Burke is being held without bail. The case will be presented to the district attorney's office on Monday for filing consideration. Now, the attorneys for David released a statement, so this is from Blair Burke. Marilyn Bednarski and Regina Peter. They say, let us be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. There has been no indictment returned by any grand jury in this case and no criminal complaint filed. David has only been detained under suspicion. We will vigorously defend David's innocence. And before I bring on Steve Fisher to break down more of our questions on this case and his perspective and his reaction and what we can expect next, here's what Steve had to say on X last night. Quote, David was arrested by complaint, not indictment, and this case will be submitted to the DA's office by Monday for charging consideration. Now, again, he said this, I think, before the attorney's statement. This likely means either the grand jury did not return an indictment or the DA chose not to seek one. An arrest by complaint means that there will be a preliminary hearing to determine probable cause. This is a public hearing where evidence is presented and witnesses are questioned under oath.
Okay, that's
something that is
4:30.
bypassed with a grand jury indictment. It will be important to see whether this reflects a difference in strategy or a difference of opinion regarding the strength of the case between LAPD and the DA, or if there is another reason for proceeding this way. Immunity agreements, whether formal or informal proffer, remain in effect even though there was no indictment. Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Okay, I want to bring in Steve Fisher right now. Steve, you have been all on top of this. I mentioned before all about your role in this, your feelings on this. I'm curious, just from a human point of view, how you feel about this moment, since you've been waiting for there to be an arrest. And to be clear, you know, again, David hasn't been officially charged. He's innocent until proven guilty. But this is not exactly what you were looking for, right? I think we all imagined that when there would be an arrest, there would be a charge, right? That this was going to be a grand jury indictment. So I'm curious, from a human point of view, how do you feel after 7 months that he has been arrested but not charged?
You know, well, it's a tough one. I feel a little bit better, obviously, that it looks like the process is starting, but this is not how I imagined it starting. You know, from what we see in the paperwork, it appears they went the grand jury route, and to find out that there's not an indictment here is worrying. It appears that there's maybe a difference of opinion between the LAPD and the DA's office as to whether what the charges should be, or if there should be charges. And you know, we don't know if it went for a vote and it came back with no true bill, no indictment. That's very concerning. And even if they didn't, if the DA hasn't sent it for vote or asked for a vote yet or for an indictment, why? So listen, Monday's going to be a big day. You know, that's the day they have to decide whether there'll be charges right now or not, or whether he's released.
What's the biggest hole in this case? Is it the idea of the cause of death? Is it the idea of understanding what David's alleged role is? Is it the idea that he's the only one currently arrested? I mean, what would be the thing that might be missing? I interviewed Bradford Cohen, who agrees there might be some disagreement of thought in terms of the LAPD and the DA's office. You know this case better than anybody. What might be lacking in a potential prosecution here?
Well, I think that so the prosecutor's name that we've seen attached to a lot of the grand jury filings that have come public is known for being very, very, very thorough. And if this case had that smoking gun evidence, if it had that crime scene, if it had the blood, whatnot, then I think we would have seen charges very quickly. But we didn't. So that means this is a circumstantial case. This is probably going to rely on testimony by people like Neil Langston or Rob Morganrath, the manager. And I don't know if that particular district attorney really wanted that type of case. So a couple things I think we'll be telling Monday are, one, if he's charged, and if he is, who the prosecuting attorney is on it. And so I think maybe, and this is pure speculation, I don't have any inside information on this part of it. Just my thought process is that it probably is a difference of opinion, and it probably is more circumstantial case than they want.
Before I go into what could happen Monday, has your client reacted to this arrest at all?
He has. He's has reservations. This is not. Listen, we're glad it happened. There's no doubt, and I'm not knocking LAPD for going forward and making the arrest. It's just there's a big question mark as to what's going to happen Monday, because if the DA wasn't comfortable either sending it to a grand jury for vote, are they comfortable actually being under the gun and having to file charges on Monday?
What's the process? Do they announce charges after a few hours on Monday, and then it goes to a preliminary hearing in front of a judge to determine there's enough probable cause? Do they bring it back to a grand jury for an indictment? Because one of the things we were wondering is this grand jury, this reported grand jury that's been hearing evidence, were they just an investigative grand jury?
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just Peyton Manning. I'm also motivating Manning. When I say insurance, you say financial services. Insurance. Financial services. Insurance. Financial services. Now when I say nationwide, you say it's both. Nationwide.
And jury that didn't have the power to indict. They were just there to hear evidence, get subpoenas, lock in testimony. So what actually will happen by the end of the day on Monday, end of the day on Tuesday?
Well, I imagine, I would not be surprised. There's going to be a couple different angles here, because the DA's office is going to come under a lot of pressure right now. But that doesn't mean that they're going to make a decision on pressure. So they'll probably use, I would imagine, most of the day on Monday. They can only hold a person so long without being charged or cutting them loose. And as far as then what the process is, it's hard to say. I think there's going to be some gamesmanship here going on. I think that ultimately David would probably waive his right to speedy trial, just possibly to give his attorneys more time. But if not, preliminary hearing comes up, or they can send it back to a grand jury. We don't even know if there's a grand jury seated right now, because in LA County, you can only hold criminal grand juries for 30 days. So if this grand jury process has been going on for months and months, these have been different grand juries. And so maybe now it is a grand jury that has charging power, if it was just investigated before. It's really hard to say what it looks like right now, because there hasn't been any movement.
Right. Let me ask you this. He was in the Hollywood Hills possibly this whole time, and we saw authorities in tactical gear making the arrest. We weren't sure where he was. Did you have any idea that he was at this house in the Hollywood Hills?
Yeah, so I learned about 2.5 months ago that he was in West Hollywood, and it really surprised me, to be honest with you. At the very beginning, I knew he was still in LA, but I thought he had probably gone home to Texas, and especially with what was going on with his parents fighting their subpoenas, their grand jury subpoenas. I thought he had probably gone back, even though like 2.5 months ago I had learned that he was in West Hollywood. But I figured he'd left by then, because I hadn't heard anything in the last few weeks. But so I was surprised he was still there. And we kept seeing really probably. I don't think he moved around much. I know he was receiving things that are another false name, but I think he shows that he thinks his career is going to take off again one day.
But there was no indication like he was about to leave the country, and like we have to immediately make an arrest before something happens. Like you saw the photos from the arrest. I've seen the reporting from it. I haven't seen anything that there was a level of violence, that he was fighting it, that they chased him. I don't know if his attorney got advance notice that this was happening, but I didn't see anything to indicate. You tell me that he was a flight risk or anything.
No, I mean, what I did see is that there were some U.S. Marshals there as well. They had tactical vests on, so I think that they probably knew where he was the whole time. I think they were keeping an eye on him for preventative reasons. He was free to come and go. We could even leave the country if we wanted to. But I think they were keeping an eye on him. It probably gives him a little bit a sense of power, knowing that something's not happened with a grand jury. I probably isn't feeling too bad about it.
What did you make of his lawyer's statement?
I think that it probably did catch it. I don't know if they got advance notice, because it seemed like it was, to say that it wasn't even charged by complaint. I think there is I think it's safe to say there's a complaint there. They said that they did send a complaint out by Monday. So I don't know. Listen, this is where high dollar attorneys really can excel, right? When there's it's a
Uh-huh.
circumstantial type case, and they can get the high dollar expert witnesses and pick them apart. And,
They said there was no, that he's not the cause of death. How do they know that?
How?
well, that's the other thing. Like, there's certain things like this. The evidence will show. But what is
The evidence points to him, though. That's why I'm not understanding.
With LAPD, because from what we understand, he hasn't even sat for an interview with LAPD, so he doesn't even know exactly what those questions will be. Are there other people that have appeared in front of the grand jury that they've been able to debrief? Hard to say, It seems like they do have some handle on what the evidence is, though.
Were you surprised there were no other charges against him, and were you surprised that nobody else was arrested?
Yeah, I was, because there are other crimes here. Listen, we know that the mutilation of a corpse alone now that's a felony, because it's not simply
SA is a crime.
Concealment. Like we've heard in the LAPD press release originally, this was mutilation, so it's a whole different thing. There is sex crimes. So I'm very, very confident. This is just my opinion from what I've seen, but I've talked to victims that there are sex crimes here. And in these cases, a lot of times you'll see kind of a bunch of charges thrown at the wall, and then they'll take them off as they get further down, after prelim and whatnot. But that's not the case here. It sounds like it's a single charge type of complaint, and it's also what we saw. It matches up with what we saw in the paperwork filed in Texas, where they talk about a single charge of murder 187, which is murder of forethought. It's a strong charge. It was the strongest charge, but why not throw them all out there in case something like this happens?
And you, right before his arrest, you went on X. You expressed your frustration with the lack of action, with the lack of movement here, and you believe that authorities haven't been consistent with the crimes that were allegedly committed here, right? Their discussion of what happened here, right?
Yeah, listen, it's been a very frustrating process. The only reason that myself and my client are still involved in this is because we want to make sure that there's justice for this young teen who he was taken advantage of and ultimately, murdered. And it's been a very slow process. I understand investigations take time. However, it seemed like it was stalling out, and maybe this is proof that it was, because it does seem to me, I haven't seen the interview with their progress, but it seems to me that there is a disconnect between LAPD and the DA's office.
Well, no, even at the very least, you took issue with the fact about, well, there's only concealment of a body that might be charged here, not murder, and you're like, well, if she was dismembered, you were talking about something else here.
Well, what my issue is that, in my opinion, that we got limited press releases in this case. We got 2, I believe, from LAPD. No press conferences, and they were not telling the truth in the press release, where they came out and said the only, there might not be any criminal culpability beyond concealment of a body.
Okay.
Which is, in California, is a misdemeanor.
Which I don't understand
that.
that.
Is mutilated. That is not concealment of a body any longer. That's mutilation of a corpse.
Yeah, that's mutilation.
And
Yeah.
at the time they put that press release out, that
why was he not charged for that?
That is not true. And then the next press release, the only other press release they came out with, was them saying that they had the medical examiner's records sealed just to make sure that detectives received that information first. And, that's been months. And why not unseal it?
Is that going to be released now?
I think it has to be, because
ain't no choice but to release it.
Listen, I think that if Blair Burke or his attorney, David's attorneys, have reason to believe that they can show that he wasn't the cause of her death, then they're going to, obviously they'll get that information anyways, but I do think that once this discovery process starts, they're going to unseal them. Now, and there might have even been a contingency in the sealing documents, or the judge signed, saying that upon charging or upon indictment or whatever, that these are unsealed within 7 days or something like that, just kind of like a grand jury transcripts would be. Now, they won't be, because it wasn't an indictment. However, same type of process. So I do think within the next couple of weeks, if he's charged, that those will be unsealed.
Where does Neo Langston fit into all of this? Because you've been quite vocal about him, right? His purported friend who was allegedly arrested for failing to appear as a witness, reportedly brought in front of criminal proceedings, grand jury to testify. He takes to Instagram a short time ago. I mean, this is like about, I don't know, maybe last month or so, had a series of posts where he talked about his silence, how he said the case isn't about me, it's about getting justice for the victim. Really took some shots at seemingly David, called him, I mean, it looked like he was calling him a derogatory name. And he said he has like all the receipts, and you know, he said, thankfully I'm legally fine in every way. Boy, do I got all of my receipts for things, ha 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 ha. He hasn't been charged, he hasn't been arrested. Where do you think he fits into all this?
Well, I think he knows a lot, and in there he was saying, he was very vocal, like you said. He came out and said that he had all these receipts and he was legally fined. But then they seemed to leak to TMZ that he didn't even have anything to tell the grand jury. He says only in there for 40 minutes, so it can't be both, right? I think he knows a lot. From what I've investigated personally, I think him and a couple others know a lot, and I think that they probably got some sort of immunity, unfortunately, will probably had. I'm not saying that they're directly tied to the murder itself, but after the fact, I think they knew certain things that they should have come forward with, and I don't think he's the only one. I think there's three of them, personally, at least three of them, and I think that they're gonna walk away just for their testimony, because I think this is a circumstantial case.
It was interesting. I was talking to Bradford Cohen in another episode of Sidebar, and he was like, look, if someone's involved in the actual murder, there's only so much leeway that the DA would look past. If they're involved in a murder, it'd be kind of unlikely that they'd be granted some sort of protection or immunity. I mean, it depends on how much they would want the alleged ringleader, the person who's instrumental in this. But it does make you wonder what everybody's alleged role or not role is in all this. Again, to be clear, David's the only one who's been arrested. And then I was thinking about, okay, so he's arrested. And I was thinking about his parents and his brother. You mentioned it. They were fighting these subpoenas to testify. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of their testimony would have been, but it was through those filings that we learned more details about what seemingly happened to Celeste. What do you think that's all about with his family now that he's been arrested?
You know, I don't know, and I do think they could be kind of the catalyst for why LAPD went ahead and arrested him on complaint, because shortly after we threw that out there about the filings in Texas and what was going on, and which had all the information about her being dismembered, they filed a motion to seal those records in Texas, and they were successful. So now on the docket, you don't see anything. So we don't even know if that's made its way. It was like on a third appeal. It's made its way through the court, and LAPD might just said, listen, this thing could be hung up for months and months and months in this appeal court. Why do we even need the parents' testimony? Because we're probably not going to get a thing out of them. So
come on.
Maybe they just said, we're going to go ahead and, there's public pressure and people want answers about this 14-year-old that lost her life, and we're going to go ahead and say we've done our investigation. We think we've gathered everything that's out there to be gathered right now. And here it is, and it's up to the DA whether to charge it or not.
And the Santa Barbara trip?
DA whether to charge it or not.
And the Santa Barbara trip? The Santa Barbara trip that police say he allegedly took in the spring of 2025. Do you have any more clarity about that, if we're thinking about this arrest or how it fits into it?
So I don't have any information on the Santa Barbara trip. I'll tell you that we do have some evidence about a trip to a part of the National Forest that it's not Santa Barbara County. It's, I guess, I don't even know if you could confuse it, but it's not in. It's not close to LA. There was a trip area which looks a lot like the topography of Santa Barbara, but it's not Santa Barbara. So I don't know if there's another trip we don't know about, or if these two might be getting confused a little bit. But he did make a trip to. In fact, I put a photo out on Twitter a few months ago of a photo he took by himself in a forest location, really remote area. Whether it's that has anything to do with her murder or dismemberment, I don't know, but it's an interesting photo. But I don't see any evidence of Santa Barbara myself.
Do you know how Celeste's family's doing?
I don't. I've never had any contact with anybody in the family. I've tried to respect their grieving process, their boundaries, but at the same time, did have some questions if they were willing to talk. We've reached out to a couple people in the family. They have not gotten back to us. I do think through people I've talked to, trying to get some further clarity on people that knew David. I do think if he's charged on Monday, I think some more people are going to come forward and be willing to talk. Not that there's more victims or anything, but people that may know some things about how long it's been going on with Celeste, or even other people that had communication with David, but they're underage. I think there might be a few of these people that come forward now. They'll be more comfortable that he's charged. That's if he's charged. No.
So before we wrap things up, based on your investigation, based on your opinion, your perspective, do you think there is sufficient probable cause to support a murder charge against David for the death of Celeste?
That's a tough question. I'll tell you, without knowing exactly what Neo and possibly Rob, who we know appeared, the manager, what they know, that's hard to say. I do know that I believe there's probable cause for sex crimes and other charges related to holding Celeste, harboring and whatnot. The murder, it's hard to say. I think it's circumstantial.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think it's a circumstantial case, and I have not talked to Neo or those other two people directly, and without knowing what they're going to say, it's hard to say.
We don't have clarity on any of this. We don't have clarity on what anyone's alleged role in this is. Again, David is innocent until proven guilty.
Yep.
He has not been officially charged. We will see if that happens. Obviously, this is a big development, but we're still trying to understand exactly where this fits into the overall story. Steve Fisher, thanks for taking the time. As always, appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.
Introducing X-Tool P3, the laser workhorse with intelligent.
With the breaking development that singer David has now been arrested in connection with the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez and the release of his attorney's new statement, we have a ton of legal questions we need to answer. Why wasn't he charged yet? He's only been arrested. Why is there a dispute over cause of death? Is there a weakness in this case? What was the evidence LAPD had to make this arrest? So many questions. I'm going to be breaking it down with renowned celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, real quick before we jump into all of this, we have this app, this partner that I think you're going to love. It's called Upside. Upside gets you cash back, extra cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, takeout. So here's what you do. You download Upside for free. You claim an offer at one of their 100,000 plus locations. You pay like normal with your card. You verify the purchase, and just like that, money back. So say I need to get gas or I want takeout one night, I'll search for Upside offers first, and after I spend, money appears in my app that I can transfer right into my bank account. And Upside's frequent users earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting your cash back, click the link in the description or scan the QR code, but make sure to use promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. After 7 months, 21-year-old David Anthony Burke, David, the singer, has been arrested for the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And look, well, my colleague, Chris Stewart, on the case, broke down the breaking news of David's arrest last night. I was on News Nation. I was hosting my show. I couldn't get to it. I apologize. There is a lot more that we need to break down today. There is a lot more that has come out since that arrest. And there's a lot of legal questions we need to make sense of. I mean, I'm made of legal questions right now. Why wasn't he indicted? Why was he just arrested? Meaning he was arrested for suspicion of murder, but he hasn't been charged. Wasn't there a grand jury hearing evidence? Did the LA District Attorney's Office know the LAPD was going to make an arrest? What happens now in terms of charging? Is this a sign the case may not be strong? Are there cooperating witnesses? His attorney's statement is very interesting, particularly when they talk about cause of death. But let me just start with this, okay? So this is from the LAPD, their PIO. Quote, detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division have arrested David Burke, a 21-year-old resident of Los Angeles, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Burke is being held without bail. The case will be presented to the district attorney's office on Monday for filing consideration. Now, this came in from the LA County District Attorney's Office. Good evening. Our office is aware of the arrest of David Anthony Burke by the Los Angeles Police Department. The case is expected to be presented to the Major Crimes Division, at which point prosecutors will review the facts and evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to file charges. At this time, additional information is not available. We will share an update on Monday once a filing decision has been made. And then this came in late last night. Good evening. The individual mentioned is still in LAPD custody. You may reach out to the district attorney's office once the case has been presented to them. So to be clear, David has been arrested, but he hasn't been officially charged with a crime. And by the way, talk about his arrest. What a scene it was, according to NBC News. David was arrested shortly after 4:30 p.m. at a house in the Hollywood Hills located on Marmont Avenue. I mean, we hadn't heard publicly from David in months. We hadn't seen David publicly in months. He was on his Withered tour when Celeste's body was found, and that tour was canceled. Future dates were canceled. And then he went radio silent. LAPD Captain Scott Williams told the outlet, quote, we did the best we can to keep tabs on him, but once we developed probable cause to arrest him for murder, then we were on him pretty diligently. And he told the California Post they had a probable cause with them when they made the arrest. And there are photos of armed police outside this residence making the arrest. Per reporting from the California Post, David appears to be in handcuffs. He's led away. A neighbor apparently told the outlet that she saw, quote, so many cops on this street that one of them took to a loudspeaker shouting, surrender. This brings me now to David's attorney's statement. So this is from Blair Burke, Marilyn Bednarski, and Regina Peter. Let us be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. There has been no indictment returned by any grand jury in this case, and no criminal complaint filed. David has only been detained under suspicion. We will vigorously defend David's innocence. So that's right, he's innocent until proven guilty. And by the way, that was their first public statement on this case, after so many months. And to put this into context, I said 7 months. Remember when I said 7 months? It was back on September 8th when her decomposed body was found in the trunk of a Tesla, reportedly belonging to the romantic homicide singer. And while not officially confirmed by investigators, there has long been speculation and reports that Celeste and David were romantically involved. But remember, there have been no arrests, there have been no charges up until yesterday. That was the first real arrest in connection with the alleged murder of Celeste. Now, Celeste was reported missing from Lake Elsinore back in 2024. This is about 75 miles away from LA. We believe the last reported photo of her was from early 2025. We learned through court filings that Celeste had been dismembered, that her body parts were put in bags. But to be clear, no official cause of death has been revealed. Why? Because the ME's records, the medical examiner's records, were sealed. They were sealed by a court based on a request from the LAPD, which has only added to the speculation, the confusion, the frustration in this case. And those same filings indicated that David was a target in this murder investigation, which is interesting because at one point, police indicated there may not even be a crime outside concealment of Celeste's body. So something changed. We heard reporting, particularly from TMZ, that a grand jury had been impaneled out in LA on this case. There was back and forth about whether it was a grand jury that could return an indictment or merely it was an investigative grand jury that hears evidence, locks in testimony. And based on what just happened, David being arrested but not charged, isn't that telling? And remember, his purported friend, Neil Langston, was arrested for allegedly failing to appear as a witness, reportedly brought back to LA to testify in a criminal proceeding. We imagine, we presume it was this grand jury. So as you can see, there are a lot of legal questions about the case, the evidence, the defenses, whether he's actually going to be charged, how he's going to be charged, and that's what I want to talk about. So I want to bring in Bradford Cohen, celebrity criminal defense attorney, friend of the show, friend of mine. So good to see you. I'm very, very confused. I'm very confused. Look, I'm confused because
Yeah, me too.
he was arrested and not charged. He was
Arrested
what I
but
think
not
was via a
charged.
complaint, right?
That's weird as
They got him
hell.
through a probable
How
cause
you gonna
warrant.
arrest somebody and
I
not
thought there was
charge
a
them?
grand jury that was being impaneled to present an indictment. So the way I understand it is now he's arrested. They're sending it back to the DA's office for filing consideration. And they already have the case? Weren't they already presenting evidence to the grand jury? I'm confused what's going on here.
With David AI, you don't need to use Kling, Runway, or CapCut. You can generate...
Already presenting evidence to the grand jury? I'm confused what's going on here.
So I'm confused as well because I thought they were presenting evidence to a grand jury this whole time. I thought that's what was taking so long because they were determining how the cause of death happened, what the evidence was, and it was unusual because it's a Tesla, and usually Tesla has audio and video attached to their car, so you would be able to see who was putting what in where or when it happened and when it was parked. The whole thing was very unusual the way it developed and then how long it took, and then to culminate in an arrest with a complaint seems unbelievably weird because now it's going back to the DA's office who already knows all about this case for filing consideration. So I think that there's something strange going on. It could be, and I'm just spitballing, is a CYA type situation where it could be that the LAPD has a different point of view than the state attorney's office, and now they made the arrest. Now they're putting the onus on the state attorney's office to now say, listen, there's not enough evidence there. So sometimes this happens where the police feel, listen, there's enough, we're making an arrest. The state attorney's office says, don't make an arrest, there's not enough. And the policing agency just makes the arrest and says, good, now you guys can go to the press and tell them there's not enough evidence here to charge this guy where it's his Tesla, it's, 3 blocks from his house, it's his ex-girlfriend, she's 15 years old and she's found dismembered. Now you go to the press and say there's not enough evidence to charge.
You heard the statements, right? You heard the statements last night. Did it seem to you that the DA's office wasn't aware that the LAPD was going to arrest him? Because they're like, it kind of felt like we were made aware of this, we're aware of what happened. It didn't seem like it was a joint operation that they were, I mean, I could be speculating, but that's what it seemed like to me.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head. That's why I'm saying, like, the only thing I can, in this situation, is that there is not a meeting of the mind in terms of that they have enough evidence to charge this young man. And if they don't have enough evidence, or the state feels they don't, but the LAPD feels they do, like I said, the LAPD never wants to look stupid, and they do look stupid where
They always
it feels
look
like there's a
stupid.
lot
What's
of
new?
evidence here that points to this gentleman, and they're not making an arrest, and it's been 6 months, it's been 8 months. So that's why now they can say, listen, good, here's the state attorney. You can say that there's not evidence.
Let me ask you this. Tell me if any of these scenarios could be true. One, the grand jury's still hearing evidence and the LAPD just decided to arrest them while the grand jury's still hearing evidence. B, grand jury came back and said no to an indictment, which would be kind of a rare thing because of the standard to get a grand jury indictment that there's probable cause was very low. So it's maybe the grand jury said no, or maybe this was just a grand jury that was impaneled like an investigative grand jury, hear evidence, lock in testimony, and then move forward from there. Any of those possibilities realistic?
I think the third one's less likely, but it could be. But generally speaking, the first two are probably more likely scenario where the grand jury could be still hearing evidence, but the LAPD felt they weren't moving fast enough, so they made an arrest. There could be they felt that he was going to flee. It could be that they had information he was leaving the country and they wanted to lock him down because...
Even if you hear the commander, like it seems like they had eyes on him based on the reporting, that they knew where he was in the Hollywood Hills.
I would imagine that they knew where every movement that he made was. So generally, I'll tell you how this generally goes. Generally, this goes where if the state or the feds aren't ready to indict, but they feel there's a flight risk, they may make the arrest and then, figure it out. Let's see how it all goes. That's kind of generally how this works when you see this scenario. This is a little bit different because the kid was out of the country, in the country. They've been keeping eyes on him. He knows an investigation is going on. Any minute this kid could have taken off, but he didn't.
Yep.
And I think the LAPD were keeping tabs on him.
Of course
that
they
is
was.
the least likely situation that I see, but it could have been that. I think more than likely it was that the LAPD feels they have enough evidence and the state does not feel they have enough evidence, and they were tired of waiting and they just made the arrest.
Okay, what's that disconnect? Why might there be a problem in this case? I mean, I'll give you an example. It was reported that Neil Langston, David's purported friend, testified for only 30 to 40 minutes. And this was believed that he was somebody who was important to this case, that allegedly was there, that maybe had a role in this. And allegedly he was arrested for failing to appear. He was arrested in Montana, brought back. So you look at something like that, you're like, well, maybe he didn't give them what they needed. Maybe he pled the fifth. You think about David's defense attorneys who are saying he's not the cause of death. Is there something seriously lacking in this case from an
They got to
evidentiary
start
point of view?
talking.
Wouldn't it be great if you could read and manage your business mail from anywhere? Wish you had a professional business address.
In this case, from an evidentiary point of view?
Oh, I've said this from the jump. Like, everything points to a certain person or certain persons. The problem that you have is that, and I said this originally, is it a murder case because they cannot determine the cause of death? Let's say this young lady died from an OD or died from something else, and we don't know at this point how she died. And then after she died, obviously somebody or someone freaks out. They don't know what to do. There's a dead body in the house. Puts it in the trunk, tries to forget about it, things of that nature. That's not a murder case, right? That is a illegal disposing of a body. There's other charges that could be, filed on that. Originally, I thought that's where they were going with this, that it wasn't going to be a murder charge because they could not prove the cause of death. I've read some places online that they say, no, now we can prove the cause of death. I don't know how. It's been like 6 or 8 months, and they were trying to figure out what the cause of death was. So I think that is a very large hole in a case where you're charging a murder if you cannot figure out how the person died. So if you have no evidence on how the person died, but you have evidence maybe that the body was disposed of in an illegal way, you have a different charge, but you don't have a murder charge. So I think that's the big hole in this case, is no one knows how she died, when she died, because they're trying to determine it, but it's very difficult. And Dr. Bodden did some reports on how bodies decompose and trying to figure out, when someone died. What lends itself to the confusion is it was in the trunk of a car, the front trunk of the car. It's 90 degrees out, 85 degrees out. We don't know what the temperatures were, if the humidity got in there. There's a lot of things that take place.
To go back to this for a second, what is happening Monday now? So they present it to the DA's office. Does the DA, within the few hours, say we think there's enough? And then they present it in front of a judge for a preliminary hearing where it's not in front of a grand jury. It's a different kind of way to present evidence, to say there's probable cause. The judge determines if there's probable cause to support the charges, and that's how you move forward? Or do they go back to a grand jury? I mean, what are we expecting now Monday into next week?
Yeah.
So I think that at this point their hands may be tied. They might have to go for a preliminary hearing in front of a judge, or probable cause hearing in front of a judge if they're going to make that determination. I think between then and now, the defense attorneys will be calling. I'm sure they've already been in
How do they
contact with
determine
the
that?
attorney's
That's my
office, And they're
question.
going to say, like, what are we doing here? This kid should be out. Like, I don't know what the grand jury's doing, but like, how are we proceeding with the case? and I think the state will give them an idea of how they're going to proceed. If a grand jury was already impaneled and they're hearing the evidence and now this guy's arrested, they could still try, and I mean, there's different laws here. There could be speedy rules that come into play. That's why generally you don't make an arrest before you're ready to, right? Because if the demand's speedy, speedy trial, and you have to be brought to trial within a certain period of time in every state, you could be in real trouble if you're not ready to go to trial. And they might not be ready to go to trial because they still haven't gotten all the evidence that they want to proceed. So my guess is their hands are tied right now. They're going to have to make a decision of how to move forward. I'm not sure what they're going to decide. My guess would be a probable cause hearing in front of a judge, and then now they're laying the blame off to the judge to say, well, the judge didn't find probable cause. Like we presented all the evidence, judge didn't find probable cause. It's not us who didn't want to file the charges, it's now the judge. Everyone in these cases, whenever there's some stuff flying around, right, they try to cover themselves any way they can. So the LAPD is covering themselves by arresting them. The state will now cover themselves by saying, well, we filed all the evidence and we did everything we did, but the judge didn't find it, or the grand jury didn't come back with an indictment. That's how they keep laying the blame off on other people for shoddy investigations.
Are we going to learn her cause of death? Because I wonder, now that there's been an arrest and now that we're talking about the presentation of evidence, possibly more in a public forum, are the records, remember the ME's records were sealed, are they going to be unsealed and we'll learn what authorities believe her cause of death is?
So I think if you're going to go to a probable cause hearing, you're going to have to hear what the cause of death is. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
So you can't go to a probable cause hearing and say, Judge, we're still trying to figure out how she died, but we're charging him with the murder. It doesn't work. So unless they know the cause of death and they're ready to present the cause of death in front of either a grand jury or a judge or someone, this case goes nowhere. So yes, I think that if the case does go forward, we will learn the cause of death at either a probable cause determination or after an indictment comes down.
What about the probable cause warrant that was used to secure the arrest? Is there a way that can be made public?
Sure. So the probable cause that for the arrest warrant itself, once they make a determination, I don't think anyone will get it prior. Well, they may. In this day and age, who knows who gets it? But legally, I don't think they will get it prior to a determination of the arrest on whether it was a good arrest. They'll file some motions and things of that nature, and then within a week, maybe they will make that arrest warrant public. But generally speaking, before they have that probable cause hearing, before there's a determination by the state, that arrest warrant usually doesn't get out into the public until that time period. Now, again, in today's day and age, any clerk under the sun, is trying to make a little side money, might, all of a sudden that might go out. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But sooner or later, we're going to learn the cause of death. It can't be hidden.
What do you make of the fact no other defendants were arrested?
I think it's unusual because something like this usually is not carried off by one person, especially where there's dismemberment. You've got to carry a body into a trunk of a car. You got to drive the car somewhere. You got to get back to your house, or however you're going to get back to your house. Generally, there's more than one. So it's kind of unusual that there'd only be one person charged in this, but it could be because the evidence is only linking it to that one person. I don't know if they got video from the Tesla. They haven't discussed video from the Tesla, but my guess would be if there is video of this gentleman driving that Tesla to this location, even if there's no video of him actually putting something in the trunk, if there's video of him driving the Tesla to a certain location, leaving it there, and then, getting home, walking home, or taking an Uber, or however he got home, then he would be the only one that would be linked to that Tesla. But like I said, there's a large gap in evidence here that we have not seen, we have not heard.
Or there's immunity agreements. There's people who are testifying against him.
There could be immunity agreements. Generally, when it comes to a murder case, if you're assisting in the murder, it's like a Sammy the Bull Gravano situation. Depends how badly they want the person that they target, right? So, like, the government can overlook a lot of bad deeds, and the state can look over a lot of bad deeds if they really want that guy at the end. And if they want David as badly as we think they want David, yes, they could have offered some sort of immunity or maybe an early sealed plea on something lesser, like disposal of a body, and someone took a plea, but it's sealed, and we don't know about that plea until after, if David gets charged.
OptiScience lets you instantly transform any screen into a dynamic digital display that can be...
Ah, come on now. Really? Really? Now you won't? Okay, let me skip on to this. Ah, come on now. I know damn well y'all ain't gonna mess up now. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Hold on. Let me go out, come back in. Oh, Lord, come on. Get this last part.
After,
There we
if
go.
David gets charged.
Okay, so what about the idea of where the defense attorneys will go with this? You saw the arrest, right? It seemed they went in, guns, armored. There was reporting the idea that a lot of police showed up, apparently knew where he was. How does a defense attorney pick apart the actual arrest of David and maybe the probable cause warrant? Talk to me about that.
A couple things. First of all, I always find it unusual and disturbing when you have a defense attorney. The case has been going on for 6 months. This is why I don't think the state agreed with it. The state would have called the defense attorney and said, "Hey, man, you got to bring him in, and you got 2 hours to bring him in. If you don't bring him in, we already know where he is. We're going to pick him up. It's going to be ugly, etc., etc." Instead of putting SWAT officers at risk, other officers at risk, and going into a house with guns drawn and things of that nature, that's always a risk. No matter who you're arresting, no matter what type of situation, it's not a good idea. It's better to avoid that. So that first part tells me that I think the state didn't know this was going on, because if the state was involved, they would have been involved with the defense attorney. They would have pulled the kid out, and they would have, I think, turned him in that way. That's number one. Number two is, if the defense is like me, I'd be attacking exactly what every, I think, defense attorney sees in this case, is the lack of evidence. Where is the actual evidence of that it was a murder? Where is the actual evidence that ties him to the scene, other than it's his car and it's 3 blocks away from his house? It seemed like there was 5 people or 4 people in the house at all times. And most of these entertainers, I represent a lot of entertainers. Most of these entertainers have like entourages with them. They have, at any given time, there's 4 to 6 people in a house, and they're all hanging out, playing 2K, whatever they're doing. Everybody is in the house at one point. So it's like, where is the evidence that we need to see to say, yes, this is the guy, and it's the only guy, and we're arresting him for this murder? That's what is lacking here. Now, the defense attorneys may know more than we know, because they've been involved in the case and they've been seeing it develop. Who knows? But I would attack it right from jump. This case has been 6 to 8 months old. I don't even know if it's older than that. Kid went nowhere. Kids never left the country and never came back. He knew that he was under investigation. There was reports of it. So even for a bond hearing, like, where's he going? He's not going anywhere. Like, we know that. And then for a danger to society, like, how often were you watching him for the past 8 months? You're letting this guy, if you think he's a murderer, you're letting him walk the streets of LA without keeping an eye on him 24/7. There's just so much there on this case to defend at this point, because we don't know a lot, that I don't see where this case goes to an indictment.
And talking indictment, if the goal was to charge him, if the goal is to arrest him, charge him, like you said, maybe keep him in custody, no other charges right? There was nothing about the concealment or the dismemberment of the body.
Right.
Nothing also about him having allegedly a relationship with a minor, right? How come none of
Yeah,
those charges?
no SA
Again,
charges.
it's so
It's a
baffling.
big one.
Like, I don't know if LAPD had the permission or the authority from the state, which they don't need to have. I'm not saying they have to have it. But generally, when they're getting along, they coordinate these things and they say, like, here's the charges that you should hit them with. An alleged, relationship with an underage individual, the dismemberment of a body, the disposal of a body, all these other things that they would have tacked on to give us an idea what's going on, number one. And number two is to make sure he doesn't get out on bond. Here's a litany of other charges, Judge. Like, this guy is a danger. He shouldn't get out on bond. That's what they should have done. My
Right.
suspicion is, like I said, quite often you find in a lot of these different areas, LA is one of them, you'll find that the chief of police does not have the same view of different crimes with the state attorney of that area. And you find that in a lot of different areas. Orlando was one where, the prosecutor didn't get along with the sheriff. Sheriff was a real, gung-ho guy on crime, and the individual in the office in Orlando wasn't, or Tampa, wasn't as gung-ho. And you see that quite often. Now, how does that get resolved? The sheriff keeps arresting, and the state either dismisses the charges or says, we're not filing, we're not going to file on marijuana charges. And the sheriff says, I don't care, I'm still arresting people. As long as it's illegal, I'm still making the arrest. So let the state dismiss the charges. So you see that quite often in different areas, especially now. You used to never see it. But now, where I think politics play a bigger role in how crimes are charged and who charges them, I think you're seeing that more often, where a sheriff does not get along with a state attorney in that area.
Okay, let's see what happens next week. Hopefully we get more answers.
That's really interesting how this takes place.
It really is. Bradford Cohen, good seeing you, my friend. Thanks for trying to clear it up for us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.
Robot mowers are pretty awesome, except for one thing. A lot of them kind of lean a little bit on the fragile side.
Charge this phone up. They should be saying something here in a minute. Let me speed this up a little bit.
We have John McKinney, who's our Director of Specialized Prosecutions. The Assistant Head Deputy District Attorney is
Hopefully y'all can
of the
hear it.
Major Crimes Division. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman of the Major Crimes Division will be the lead prosecutor on this case. From the Los Angeles Police Department, we also have Captain Scott Williams, who's the commanding officer of LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, the Chief of Detectives, Alan Hamilton, the Director of Specialized Prosecutions, Mike Rimkunis, and the LAPD detectives on this case, Josh Byers and Corey Farrell. Today, I am announcing the charges against David Anthony Burke, the musician known as David, spelled D4VD, in connection with the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time. These charges include the most serious charges that a DA's office can bring. That is first-degree murder with special circumstances. The special circumstances being lying in wait, committing this crime for financial gain, or murdering a witness in an investigation. These special circumstances carry with it, along with the first-degree murder charge, a maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. The determination on whether or not the district attorney's office will seek the death penalty will be made at a later time. Before I get into the actual charges, and there are additional charges against Mr. Burke, including continuous sexual acts, lewd and lascivious sexual acts.
Oh, they did get him with essay. Good.
Under 14 years old, and mutilating a human remains of a body. Before I get into the description of these charges and their seriousness, I want to look at this as a parent. I am a parent of 3 children, and a parent's nightmare is a situation where your daughter goes out one night and never comes back. As we will show in a court of law, and what I also want to make sure about, that the understanding of these charges is clear, is my description of these charges is not evidence that we are going to present in court. These charges, in fact, will not be evidence in the court. Evidence will be the witness testimony, the documents, and different types of admissible testimony that we will admit into court in the prosecution, and if it leads to the eventual trial of Mr. Burke, to convince a jury of 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that each and every one of these charges is true, as well as the special allegations and circumstances that have been alleged. Now, back to this being a parent's nightmare. On April 23rd, 2025, has been alleged by the complaint, Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time, went to Mr. Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills. She was never heard from again. On September 8th, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, Miss Celeste's remains, her dismembered and decomposed remains, were found in 2 bags inside of a front trunk of a car registered to Mr. Burke. Thereafter began an investigation. The investigation was to determine who killed, who murdered Celeste months and months before. That investigation was carried out in unison and in partnership between the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division and the District Attorney's Office. At every point in the investigation, through the arrest and the filing of charges, the LAPD and the District Attorney's Office have worked in lockstep. There's been no disagreements amongst these entities in deciding how to proceed with this case, ultimately leading to these charges today. So what you have as well with these charges is that, again, there are 3 sets of charges that have been brought. The first-degree murder with special circumstances, and again, those special circumstances are lying in wait. That Celeste went to Mr. Burke's home on the night of April 23rd, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, at his invitation, and again, was not heard from again. The second is a special circumstance being that this murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for very lucrative
musical career that Celeste was threatening on that particular night. The third charge, in addition to lying in wait and for financial gain, is murdering a witness to an investigation. In this particular case, as the evidence will come out in court, the witness to the investigation was Celeste. And the investigation was into the lewd and lascivious sexual acts committed by Mr. Burke. It is the subject of count 2 of this complaint with Celeste while she was under 14 years old.
Desktop lasers aren't known for making fine furniture. Joinery is difficult. They can only cut thin material. They're small. Today, I want to prove all of that wrong by making a full-size Danish modern chair using only the brand new X-Tool P3. I've had 7 different lasers, and I can honestly say this one is the best. The camera is actually up in the lid, so I can get a photo of the entire bed. And then it's going
while she was under 14 years old. I had the chance to meet with some of the family members of Celeste, and their grief is incalculable as to what happened to their daughter. What they have demanded, what we have assured them that the district attorney's office working with LAPD would give them is the proof beyond a reasonable doubt on who killed their daughter, on how their daughter was killed, when their daughter was killed, and bring that killer to justice. That killer that we have now charged is David Anthony Burke. We will have questions after I speak and Chief McDonald speaks. At this point, I invite Chief McDonald to speak.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I want to begin by expressing my deepest condolences to the parents of Celeste Rivas. No parent or any human being should have to endure what you've gone through. Today, alongside D.A. Hockman and our partners at the LA County District Attorney's Office, and thanks to the tireless and hard work of our investigators at the LAPD, we're announcing the arrest and prosecution of David Burke for the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas. Throughout the 7-month investigation, this department has faced criticism for how we handled the case and for our decision not to provide details. I want to be clear about something. My duty is not to fuel speculation, it's to deliver justice, and that requires patience and discipline on everybody's part. This investigation was driven by a single purpose: to secure justice for Celeste Rivas and for those who loved her. We had to be certain that nothing we did or said would ever jeopardize this case. Ms. Rivas was a reported runaway from Riverside County. During the course of our investigation, detectives learned that she had been involved in a sexual relationship with Mr. Burke when she was a minor and he was an adult. On April 23, 2025, Ms. Rivas arrived at Mr. Burke's home in the Hollywood Hills. That's the last time she was known to be alive. On September 8, 2025, Ms. Rivas' dismembered and badly decomposed body was discovered in the front trunk of Mr. Burke's impounded Tesla. From that moment forward, our investigators faced an extraordinarily difficult and complex case. The condition of her remains delayed the medical examiner's ability to be able to determine cause of death. The substantial amount of time that passed between her death and the discovery meant that crucial evidence had degraded or disappeared. And as detectives worked to uncover the truth, they also had to sift through and debunk a great deal of false information circulating publicly. These challenges were real, and they required patience, precision, and an unwavering commitment to the facts. Despite these obstacles, and despite intense public pressure, our Robbery Homicide Division detectives remained steadfast in their duties. They recovered and analyzed a substantial amount of digital and forensic evidence. They stayed focused, disciplined, and committed to uncovering the truth. Their work, in close collaboration with the District Attorney's Office, has brought us to this moment today. I want to thank the district attorney and his team, as always, for their partnership. This case demanded coordination, persistence, and a shared commitment to justice. Also, thank you to our media partners for showing up today and for sharing this important message with the public. And finally, to Ms. Rivas's family, we cannot undo the pain you were feeling. Our hope is that today brings some measure of accountability and a step in the journey toward healing. Please know that the Los Angeles Police Department remains fully committed to seeking justice on behalf of your daughter. Thank you.
So at this point, we'll take questions.
Anything more you can tell us about the fact that she
The details of the allegations that it made, particularly with that special circumstance, will be produced in court.
Is your determinant policy has the difficulty was determined what the matter policy be?
So with respect to the coroner's report, we will be seeking quite quickly to provide an order to the court that now allows the coroner to release that report to the public.
From the BBC, between the finding of the body in Celeste's body for her release, why is it taking so long for an arrest to be made?
I think the police chief got it right. That in a situation where you don't have an eyewitness account, or we can't point to a video that shows the killer killing someone, you have to go through the very rigorous and thorough investigation to look at all the digital and forensic evidence. You have to speak with witnesses, often who are cooperative, and some who are not cooperative, in order to obtain all the information necessary to decide who did what, when, how, and what their mental state was at the time. That is what we've been doing over the last, between September 8th, roughly, and today when we bring these charges on April 20th. So again, it's a type of case that you want to make sure you get maximum information. And by the way, if there's anyone out there that has material information about this particular murder or any other actions taken by Mr. Burke, please come forward to the Los Angeles Police Department, come forward to the LA County DA's office, and report that information.
Mr. Hoffman, there are other people who are aware of this relationship. Is it possible that you will be arresting other people within his circle, and did he act alone in this death?
Again, with respect to whether or not there's any actions, you will know about them if we do, but at this point I'm not commenting.
Do you believe that you know how she was killed beyond it being homicide? The actual cause of death?
The coroner's report will be released shortly. Because it is not currently released, I'm not going to be commenting.
So was it determined, not that, if you won't say what it was, but it hasn't been determined how she was killed beyond it being homicide?
The coroner has made a determination on how Celeste died, and at the point that the coroner's report becomes public, we'll be able to comment.
Was there a specific breakthrough last week? Is there physical evidence that ties David to this murder?
There is physical evidence and there is forensic and digital evidence that we intend to present in court to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt.
Only a couple more questions?
Yes.
Your investigation, and just to this question, are you able to tell us exactly what the smoking gun is, and also address the issue of his visit to Santa Barbara and that how does it connect with the murder?
So with respect to the actual details of the evidence we're going to be presenting in court, I'm not going to do that today. As far as the concept of a smoking gun, the smoking gun is the totality of the evidence that we're going to bring to prove any case, whether it's this case or any case, beyond a reasonable doubt. An investigation is ongoing. If information comes forward on any, with respect to any additional crimes, we will certainly investigate it. Yes.
One more.
What makes us confident is the totality of the evidence that has been obtained by the LAPD robbery homicide, by the work that the district attorney's office has done, that has led us to the point where we believe we can prove each and every one of these three charges and the special circumstances and the special allegation beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank you, everybody. If you raise your hand if you have Spanish language and you need a Spanish language translation. Okay. Keep your hands up. My team will come around to you and we will have something at you.
Thank you very, very much.
Sorry, everybody. Thank you.
You said, has she been missing 2024 or 2025?
Okay, and that's the end of that. That was the end of them telling of David's charges. Um, he's actually supposed to be. I think he's in court right now, but allegedly they're supposed to be done with court at least by 4:30 East Coast, which is 4:10 now. Let me see. Let me see what the AP has. Okay, they're not gonna arraign him till
No matter what I'm doing,
4:30.
if I'm at the beach, hanging out with friends, or going to dinner after, I can wear these all day. They come with premium.
Okay, I thought they was gonna do a press conference, but they're gonna do the arraignment at 4:30. So with that being said, I'm gonna end this live stream here. If there is more on the on 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 this right here today, I'll come back later on. Like, share, subscribe. See y'all later. Peace.